settle down as the joint press con will start soon. Thank you.
Yeah, because they try to deflect the like. Hello.
Yeah. So pag nasa akin start, pag nakatulog. Sige.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Sanen Parlada, Director of the Export Marketing Bureau of the Department of Trade and Industry, and we are very pleased to welcome you all in today's joint press conference on the occasion of the 15th ASEAN Economic Ministers EU Trade Commissioner Consultations. We thank you all very much for coming. Leading our panel of eminent spokespersons is the chair of the ASEAN Economic Ministers meeting, Philippine Department of Trade and Industry Secretary Ramon Lopez, and he is joined by Her Excellency European Union Trade Commissioner Cecilia Malmström, His Excellency ASEAN Secretary General Le Luong Min, and His Excellency Vietnam Trade Minister Tran Tuan An. They will join us later in the question and answer session. To set the tone at this juncture and to get started with our press conference, may we now call on this year's AEM Chair, Philippine Trade and Industry Secretary Ramon Lopez. Secretary Lopez, please.
Thank you, Director Parlada. So this is our report on the 15th AEM EU Trade Commissioner Consultations. The ASEAN Economic Ministers and the EU Trade Commissioner met today, March 10, in the Philippines for the 15th AEM EU Trade Commissioner Consultations. The consultations were co-chaired by yours truly and Her Excellency Cecilia Malmström, the EU Trade Commissioner. The AEM and the EU Trade Commissioner noted the strong trade and investment relations between the two regions. Based on EU statistics, ASEAN-EU two-way trade stood at 208 billion euros in 2016, and the EU remained the largest external source of foreign direct investment flows into ASEAN in 2015, with 23.3 billion euros. The AEM and the EU Trade Commissioner were pleased also with the implementation of the ASEAN-EU Trade and Investment Work Program for 2015-2016, including the 14th AEM EU Trade Commissioner consultations, the 23rd and 24th SIOM EU consultations, the bi-regional expert dialogue groups, as well as various projects on trade facilitation, intellectual property rights, air transportation, and statistics and integration monitoring. The AEM and the EU Trade Commissioner noted with appreciation that ASEAN and EU have to date implemented 3 work programs developed in accordance with Bandar Seri Begawan Plan of Action to strengthen the ASEAN-EU Enhanced Partnership 2013-2017. The AEM and the EU Trade Commissioner shared the view that the successful implementation of these work programs has contributed to the elevation of the ASEAN-EU economic relations to new height. The AEM also expressed the appreciation for the EU's robust support to ASEAN through various programs and initiatives under the ASEAN Regional Integration Support from the EU, called ARISE, the EU-ASEAN Project on Intellectual Property Rights, the EU-ASEAN Capacity Building Program for Monitoring Integration Progress and Statistics, called EU Compass, and the ASEAN Air Transport Integration Project. These cooperation programs have provided immense support to ASEAN economic integration and the establishment of the ASEAN Economic Community with concrete outputs, including the ASEAN Trade Repository, the ASEAN Solutions for Investments, Services, and Trade, and the ASEAN Stats. To enhance economic cooperation in addressing emerging challenges and capitalizing on opportunities for trade and investment between the two regions, the AEM and the EU Trade Commissioner endorsed the ASEAN-EU Trade and Investment Work Program for the 2017 to 2018. The AEM and the EU Trade Commissioner are confident that the implementation of this work program could support future negotiations of the ASEAN-EU Free Trade Agreement. The AEM and the EU Trade Commissioner also discussed the next steps towards the resumption of the ASEAN-EU FTA negotiations. In order to reinforce the momentum, the AEM and the EU Trade Commissioner tasked the senior economic officials to develop a framework encompassing the parameters of a future ASEAN-EU FTA and to report back to the next AEM-EU Trade Commissioner consultations. The AEM and EU Trade Commissioner exchanged views as well on regional economic developments. We also note the improved outlook of the global economic growth, which is expected to pick up to 3.4% in 2017, coming from 3.1% in 2016. However, a cautious note was also sounded given the uncertain ramifications of growing protectionist and inward-looking policy stance. We also reaffirmed the commitment to a strong multilateral trading system and to the World Trade Organization. The AEM and EU Trade Commissioner committed to work towards a successful outcome at the 11th Ministerial Conference in Buenos Aires, Argentina, in December 2017. We also highlighted the importance of e-commerce development in providing wider access for micro SMEs to actively participate in global trade. We exchanged views on the initiative to establish a multilateral investment court that may serve as a single global judicial instance for resolving investment-related disputes, and noted that officials would explore the idea. We welcomed the convening of the 5th ASEAN-EU Business Summit held in Manila and commended the ASEAN-EU Business Council for its active involvement in promoting ASEAN-EU trade and investment relations through its various activities. The AEM and the EU Trade Commissioner noted the issues and recommendations raised during that consultation. So once again, we thank again the EU Trade Commissioner Malmström and her team, her delegate, for joining the AEM and having a very fruitful meeting this morning.
Thank you, Secretary Lopez. We are now ready to entertain questions from the media. However, before asking your questions, may we respectfully request that you please state your name and the organization you represent. Thank you. And we have the first question, please.
Maybe before the first question, maybe you want to add on to the report, the Trade Commissioner.
Well, just starting by thanking Secretary Lopez and the whole team for a successful organization of this joint meeting. Also thanking, of course, the ASEAN Secretariat and the Minister from Vietnam, who also done a lot of work here. From the European Union, we are very committed to strengthening and developing our EU-ASEAN relations. We have, as the Minister said, a situation this year where global trade policy is at a crossroad, where we see question marks over several major initiatives in trade and protectionist tendencies. We are committed to open trade, to advancing a positive win-win global trade agenda, and it is so important to find like-minded friends and partners here in ASEAN who see the value of trade. Our relation is vibrant and good and developing, and I think today we took important steps forward in our engagement and to unlock the real full potential of our economic relationship. The Secretary went through what we discussed today, the situation of trade in the region here, successful exchange of view with the business community, the upcoming WTO agenda, where we share a strong commitment to the multilateral system and are committed to make the Buenos Aires Ministerial a true success. We also took steps towards the goal of our region-to-region trade agreement. We agreed today, as the Minister said, and clearly in our statement, to start the preparations to identify the parameters for relaunching these negotiations, and we will engage with our civil servants to do this and organize expert meetings on different areas of mutual interest, and this will be a good basis for the free trade talks. We have an ambitious bilateral trade agenda with several countries in this region. They will continue, of course, but they are a complement to the free trade agreement on a region-to-region basis. They will by no means be exclusive. They will support each other. We are happy that this year is the 50th anniversary of the ASEAN cooperation. It is also the 40th anniversary of EU-ASEAN cooperation. It would be the 60th anniversary of the Rome Treaty, laid the ground for the European cooperation. So there's a lot of things to celebrate. Celebration is good, but also concrete step forwards is of course what counts, and we've taken very important initiatives today, and the joint leadership that has been shown today by ministers will hopefully send a powerful signal to our citizens, to our economies, that we are working to improve their conditions, but also to other trading partners, encouraging them to join in an open global trade agenda. So I'm looking very much forward to our next meeting in Singapore, and thanks again to the whole Filipino delegation for the formidable work you've done to make this conference such a success.
Thank you.
Thank you, Excellency Malmström, and my apologies for skipping that. Now, I think we are ready now to take the first question from the floor.
Hi. Good afternoon. I'm Teresa Serrojano from Associated Press. Can you elaborate on, or have you set goals on increasing trade and investments within the two partners? And can you elaborate on the multilateral court that Secretary Lopez mentioned?
Well, we've taken very important steps to increase our trade and investment today by stepping up the expert meetings in different areas of high importance to us in the trade area, such as SMEs, IPR issues. We have a long list where we will have expert meeting, and also, as I said, defining the parameters so that we can soon relaunch the region-to-region negotiations. Setting up concrete goals is, of course, difficult because politicians can create the environment and the condition, but it is the business who, on the ground, delivers on this. On the investment court, that is a discussion that comes from an increasing debate worldwide. We have seen it very much in Europe, but in many countries across the world, on the ISDS system, which is the Investment State Dispute System. A system that was created in 1959. There are 3,400 bilateral agreements across the world, most countries have them, designed to protect investments in a foreign country from expropriation or nationalization. This goal is still valid, but the way these agreements have been designed has been increasingly criticized. They lack transparency, there is no appeal mechanism, and the conditions today have changed. We've also seen some unfortunate examples that similar cases across the world have been judged differently. So we are embarking with Canada to try to reform our system in our bilateral agreement. It's also in our agreement with Vietnam and others. And as the whole world is discussing this right now and looking at reforms, we thought that why not do it together to see if we can put all these trade agreements under a joint multilateral umbrella and future investment treaties as well, for sort of permanent court, which would be transparent and have an appeal mechanism. Exactly how this would be designed is, of course, open to discussion, but we are now discussing with many countries to see if they would support the idea, and then, of course, we need to look at the details. We had a very good constructive discussion today. Of course, there are many questions left, but the idea that we need to do something jointly is something that appeals to many countries. So we will continue to discuss this on the global agenda and see if we can sort of identify the steps in this to see if this can materialize.
Maybe if I can add to that, in the meeting at the AEM, several ministers have also indicated that their support, show of support on that initiative to create a multilateral investment court system that will evolve into a more objective, more independent and neutral system, because the way it will be structured is something that will I guess, lead to less biases, I would say, because in terms of the number of, or let's say the selection of the adjudicators, the remuneration, and so many things that are involved in a non-multilateral, this multilateral system will hopefully prevent, certain biases on the structure. So it's a kind of a long-term solution to having a more independent system on this investment court. Yes, and of course, obviously, on the first question, that is something that will be worked out on with respect to the targets. We can only hope that, because we're coming from a very good performance in recent years, growth between ASEAN and EU, we can expect just a sustained, and maybe with all these efforts, particularly when we allowed and when we heard the programs with the ASEAN EU Business Council, the way the initiatives that they are proposing with respect to capacity building, including their support to the SMEs, their financial, physical infrastructure support, the removal or reduction of barriers, or they're working with government to further reduce all these barriers, will all help in greater flow of goods and services in the years to come.
Thank you, Trade Commissioner Malmstrom and Secretary Lopez. We're now ready for the next question.
Everything is clear.
Follow-up question?
Yeah, I have another question. You discussed about the challenges that are present today. Can you elaborate on that, and what steps are you taking to address those challenges?
Are you addressing that to Secretary Lopez, or? Okay, Secretary Lopez, I guess. Yeah?
No, well, I guess all of us have been hearing some, I guess, rhetorics or statements from other, world leaders. But I guess the question is whether or not those will be translated to actual policies and moves that will really curtail globalization or would be anti-globalization moves. That remains to be in question. But certainly those statements create a certain degree of uncertainty whenever we hear those statements. So as in any, I guess, economy right now, we just wish that there will be no disruption in the way the globalization efforts and all trends are happening, and that we simply sustain a more integrated economy moving forward.
Well, the global challenges are, of course, many, but in our field, we do see tendencies of protectionism and anti-globalization across the world. So, of course, our challenge as political leaders is to make the case for the importance of open and fair and free trade, to make sure that that also is efficient, so that it trickles down to the SMEs, to the companies, and give effects when it comes to investment and jobs for our citizens. The trade is sometimes used as a scapegoat to blame all the miseries of the world, but the fact is that trade creates many, many more jobs than are lost. But of course, in a globalized, quickly changing world, there are technical development, automatization, robotization, industrialization makes certain jobs disappear. That has always been the case, but today that process is quicker. So generally that is a positive process, but there are also people who find that the work they had no longer exists. So we must make sure that politicians and companies work together to ensure that those who do lose out of the changes are compensated by social systems, but also making sure that we globally engage in training, in skills, in education, so that people can move to different jobs as well. This is a challenge that we have globally, but trade per se, closing borders, building walls, raising tariffs will not be a solution. That will be rather to reinforce the problems. We need to show that we can make good win-win trade agreements, and that is a big challenge that we have today, everybody who is engaged in trade.
Thank you. Next question, please. Yes.
I'm Claire Yao from CNN Philippines. Why is it important for us to revisit an ASEAN-EU free trade agreement? And for the EU, what can this bring, or what can this add to your list of bilateral trade agreements you already have with the region? And I guess for ASEAN countries, how important is it that we have an FTA with a trade bloc as big as the EU?
Well, the ASEAN bloc is a very important partner to us, not only economically, it's also an important political partner. We discuss many different areas in different contexts as well. And we are negotiating, indeed, from the European Union, a lot of bilateral trade agreements with Philippines, for instance, but also in this region and other parts of the world as well. We will continue to do so because we believe it is important to connect to growing markets and to take away as many obstacles to trade as possible. Of course, having a region-to-region agreement between the EU and the ASEAN is a long-term goal that we have been discussing for many years. We are now taking steps towards this. This, I think, would send a very powerful signal to our, not only send a political signal, but also be economically very important to our companies, facilitating even further trade between us. Trade agreements today are quite complex. It's not only about eliminating tariffs, that is important, but it's about broader market access. It's about issues such as investment, raw materials, sustainable development, all these issues that we can discuss and that will, we think, broadly contribute to increased prosperity for our people, but also increasing people-to-people contact between our different nations.
Rejoinder from Secretary Lopez.
Yeah, so, of course, the benefit would be a greater integrated approach. If we move from a bilateral to a region-to-region, so we now consider, for example, the ASEAN bloc and an ASEAN product with an ASEAN rules of origin that is the one dealing with an EU, instead of just, for example, just a Philippine product being exported or being traded with EU. So you have a wider perspective and a wider, I guess, leg room to do all this production integration if we look at a different perspective of a region-to-region FTA. And these are all being explored right now. And that's the way it goes in terms of, the trends that we're seeing. Of course, as you know, the ASEAN is also trying to build and work and arrive at conclusion on the RCEP within the ASEAN region, but definitely working on another region-to-region can only bring more mutually beneficial results when it comes to trade.
Thank you, sir. Next question. Yes, Raymond? Oh, Roy. Si Roy pala.
Hello, sir. I'm Roy from the Inquirer, and I would just like to ask any of you, can you explain more about the timing of the resumption of the FTA talk between ASEAN and EU? Like, why did you decide it now, just when Trump decided to pull out of TPP? And also, can you discuss how this would affect the ongoing negotiations? Because people think that during the time that this negotiations between bilateral countries between EU and, for example, the Philippines, when those negotiations were being made, they were being made with concessions, thinking that it would only just be bilateral and not evolve into a regional trade later on. So how would this affect those ongoing negotiations?
Maybe if you ask me, there will be no direct effect. I mean, we can still do the bilateral, but on a region-to-region, you just have to deal and take a regional standpoint and position when it comes to the negotiation. It is something that we all understand would require more time. Definitely, this is not something that will be finalized tomorrow or next year. Just on RCEP alone, if you would realize, it has been a couple of years already, I think over 5 years or about 5 years, because as you really go down to the negotiations and in each of the items being discussed, it really requires more time. But working towards these initiatives can only help, promote greater trading between the two regional blocs.
think it is too early to set out a timetable for this. We are taking step forwards every time, as also the ASEAN integration process is developing and becoming more and more mature. But I think today is a very important step forward, and I agree with Secretary Lopez that bilateral agreements, they're not in opposition. They are stepping stones towards defining common goals, etc. Obviously, ASEAN is a heterogeneous region in many ways, so there will have to be, different. This will have to be taken into consideration, and some of the bilateral trade agreements might be more ambitious, and the region to region more of an umbrella on that. But they can be perfectly complemented, and I think actually they do reinforce each other, those processes.
Thank you. Next question, please.
Hi, sir. Hi, sir. Amy here of Manila, Philippines.
Okay.
Sir, I have 2 points. With the rising protectionism and inward-looking policies of other countries, is there a reason enough, or is this making you EU and ASEAN move forward or accelerate the negotiation on the region-to-region FTA? And second is, because of this rising protectionism and the rising also in region-to-region agreements, would you consider, or the EU and ASEAN, would you also call upon the role of the WTO to perhaps move faster or enhance further trade agreements to push for or to counter these rising challenges?
Thank you, Bernie. Trade Commissioner Malmström.
Thank you. I think, as the Secretary also said, we have been discussing a region-to-region trade agreement for quite some years, and there are different steps to be taken in order for the time to be really ripe to do that. Now we're taking one very important step. Of course, as we both alluded to, there is a growing protectionism in the world. So those of us who believe in open markets and in good trade, win-win trade agreements speak out. And that is perfectly natural. Of course, in an ideal world, all trade agreements would be done within the WTO, but that is not possible. The important thing is that we respect the WTO rules, of course, that all trade agreements are compatible with that. And we agreed today, we had a very long and good discussion on the upcoming ministerial conference that would take place in Buenos Aires in December, where I think we have mutual interest in quite a lot of areas concerning fisheries, domestic support, e-commerce, for instance, where we will try to work together to see if we can get common positions and common texts in order to get a good outcome, realistic, but a good outcome in WTO in December, to show that the multilateral system cannot solve all the problems, but it can gradually take step forwards in order to follow the changes on the global trade market, so to say. So yes, the multilateral system is very important, and we are totally committed to defend and to develop it.
Thank you. Secretary Lopez.
Yeah, I think on the angle of the question whether the observation of uncertainties and anti-globalization, and that's the reason why we're doing the region-to-region discussions. I think the region-to-region is really an initiative that the two regions, two regional groupings believe in as a necessary step towards greater economic integration, the benefits thereto, regardless of what's happening outside the two regions. It's a coincidence maybe, but I think with or without those uncertainties, I think as long as the two regions and the parties there to see a positive result on such integration, obviously that is something that will be pursued.
Thank you. I think we have time for a couple more questions, and there are two ladies raising their hands there. Yes, please.
My question is directed to Secretary Mon Lopez. I'm Sweden Vlado from PTV4. Sir, one of the goals of the ASEAN is to bring it down to the grassroots level so that our kababayans would understand it better and more. So my question, sir, is specifically for the Philippines, in what particular aspect has the country benefited from the ASEAN and EU relations? Do we have any figures, sir?
No, definitely. You can see all these greater job generations coming from, let's say, investments, trading activities. Even if you talk of within ASEAN, even before the December 2015 ASEAN Economic Community, we've been reducing the tariff and liberalizing many of our sectors, and with that, you see a greater growth in the economy. As you can see, even the bigger figures, top-line figures of 6 to 7% growth, lowering unemployment rate from 6.5% to now 4.7%. These are the net effect, and if you like to look into specific examples, there are companies that are now looking into the region as an expanded market for them, and they're not just focused on the Philippine market. So look at the Philippines with 109 million market, you look at the ASEAN with 620 million, you see a big difference and a big addition to your market. And that's the reason why many of our companies, even small companies, SMEs like the Orai Spa, personal care products, to as big as Jollibee and Potato Corner and many other companies, Oishi, those guys that have started to operate outside or export their products to these other countries definitely has expanded their operation, invested more, and therefore they have created more jobs for our people.
Thank you, Secretary Lopez. Next question, please. No more questions. So on that note, we'd like to thank all our media partners for coming here. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming, and let's all have a nice, productive afternoon. Maraming salamat po. Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, everyone. I am Senan Parlada, Director of the Export Marketing